All right, you are preparing for a retake. So we are going to do a quick review of previous slides you've seen in the 2 lessons before this retake, as well as looking at additional examples to really help you understand what is a meet standard, what is approaching, and what is below. Our screen right now shows a previous example that was discussed in lesson 2. This is the meeting standard rubric and an example. The highlights corresponding colors illustrate how this sample met standard. There's a definition, an example, and the theme is clearly stated. Here we have an example of a non-example. Here we have a sample that is a non-example. And what's going on here is the student has provided the definition twice in different words. So they're actually missing an example of growth. They just describe what growth means, but they don't give an example. Okay, and this is a common mistake that students make. Here we have another non-example. This one has many errors. It doesn't clearly state the theme of oppression. It has 3 grammatical errors, capitalization, ed is missing here, and a period. And it lacks specificity, doesn't clearly explain what oppression is. And the example has a good beginning. It refers to George Floyd and that topic, but doesn't explain how was George Floyd an example of oppression. So this is a below standard because it does not meet 2 of the meeting standard criteria. It actually doesn't even meet 3. Okay, so now we're going to just take a look at more examples. Examples tend to help students clearly understand each category. Okay, so meet standard. Here are 2 examples, and you can see how each part of the rubric is addressed because I've provided corresponding highlights that show how each indicator is satisfied. Themes are clearly stated and defined, and they have examples. Pause here to read them through to yourself. Here are 2 more examples. Very similar to the previous slide. Pause here to read them to yourself. Here is where it gets gray and it's harder for students to understand. So we're going to spend more time on approaching standard than we did on meeting. What you see on this slide are examples of student responses and the feedback that they need to improve their responses. So for the first one, the student copied the definition online and did not clearly state what theme they were talking about. For the second one, the student just says that a compromise is an agreement, but doesn't explain that both sides have to give something up for it to be a compromise. The third one, also copied from online. And the last one is a good definition, it just doesn't have an example. These are more examples of approaching standard. The feedback is clearly delineated in the maroon text. You can pause here to read them to yourself and take a look at them. It is very helpful for students to look through these examples so they do not make the same mistakes again. Now, a few below standard examples. Again, all the feedback is provided. You can read them to yourself. It's pretty straightforward. But what we have here are students who are clearly not showing their understanding of the theme, and therefore they earned a below standard. And this is the last round of examples of below standard. After you watch this video again and pause through certain slides, you will be ready for the retake.